No more, mama. They wanna make my business scatter. They wanna make a big woman.
War is Not Good by Professor Jones Dopo. This is focused on Liberia. Tonight, our topic is on the Liberian Civil War. That's part one. We'll be interviewing some veteran journalists who cover extensively from the front line, the Liberian Civil War.
They wanna make my children scatter. They wanna make my family not go there. For me, everybody know. Look at my go.
We want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight we are focused. This is part one of our series on the Liberian Civil War. I sometimes love to call it the Uncivil War. And our friend, Professor Jones Dopo, is thinking war is not good.
One day, she will have to return. One day, she will have to return. My brother, she is here with her. She's not only her, she is here with her. So I'm ready to make my baby know how what I want, Papa. They wanna make a woman be with me. They wanna make a woman be with me. They wanna make a woman be small. They wanna make a small be with me. For me, everybody know. Looking for my phone, looking for trouble. I'm a brother never could be
The Liberian Civil War happened between 1989 to 2003. At that time, Liberia was in total mess, total crisis. Finally, it was resolved. But what the war left behind is still with us. It is important that we discuss it. Tonight, we have invited two distinct personalities that cover the war extensively as reporters. We're going to be speaking to them. So I want to invite all of you, invite a friend, tune in to Focus on Liberia, share the video, and let's dive into it. It is against the background of our past that we can construct the future. Most of the things we do, they are inextricably linked to our past, especially the Liberian Civil War. I was a teenager then. I lived through the war. I experienced it myself. And I feel that we at Focus on Liberia realize that we have to talk about the war. We Liberians have to write our own history. And the war being an intrinsic part of our history, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. So we have started a brand new series on the Liberian Civil War. Part one is focusing on some journalists who cover the war. Part two will bring in some survivors to tell their stories. So with me to do this, we have invited these veteran journalists, Liberian journalists who cover the war. And I want to say welcome our guests to Focus on Liberia. That's Jackson, Kanneh, and James Fasuekoi. Guys, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With me to discuss this, to treat this very important topic is my co-host, Daniel Knuckles-guishard. Daniel, welcome to Focus on Liberia, and let's get this rolling.
Thanks, Dennis, and welcome again to our guests. Thanks for joining us. We're here every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we also have some other special shows that pop up. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post all of our videos as well. That's Focus on Liberia at YouTube. And also follow us here on Facebook at Focus on Liberia so you can keep up to date with what we're doing. As Dennis said, tonight we have two Liberian journalists who covered the uncivil civil war in our country, Liberia. First, we have with us Jackson Kanneh. He worked with the Daily Observer up until the war, then the newspaper during the course of the war. Then in 1992, VOA acquired him. Months later, Reuters news agency hired him as a replacement for the retiring late veteran Stanton Peabody. He also worked with international agencies from that time until he left Liberia in 1997. So Mr. Kanneh, welcome to Focus on Liberia, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be on.
Same here. Up next, we have James Fasuekoi. He is an author, award-winning journalist, and documentary writer and photographer. He worked for 8 years as a Liberian-based Associated Press correspondent, covering upheavals and wars in both Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. His works have been published by CNN, the New York Times, Baltimore Sun, and the Boston Globe. Of the more than 500 local and foreign journalists that cover Liberia's civil war, Fasuekoi's exceptional journalistic works have led to his subpoena twice by a major U.S. court, making him testify in 2 key international war crimes trials held in recent years in Philadelphia, USA. Currently, he is a writer and associate editor for the U.S.-based theafricapaper.com and president of the Midwest chapter of the ALJA USA. So welcome, Mr. Fasuekoi, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Danielle.
You're welcome. Okay, now to start tonight's interview, we just want to get an understanding of both of you guys' background. So can you tell us exactly, Mr. Fasuekoi, when you got involved with journalism in the war in Liberia and how?
Thank you for the question. I actually got involved with the war from the starting point, which was December 24th, 1989, when the rebel first attacked the northern town of Butu in Nimba. I remember my first photo documentary I did in a couple of days after the war was announced by the Liberian president, was going to the then Chase Manhattan Bank on Randa Street, where a lot of people had rushed to the bank to collect their savings. There were hundreds of people in line, hurriedly trying to get their money. And from there, I began shooting pictures and writing reports, and till the rebels were about to enter the city. And then at that time, remember, I was also a student at the University of Liberia studying mass communications. So all this time, I was in school at the same time covering every event relating to the war till the war entered the city. So that's when I had to flee to for my life. And I escaped the city, stayed in the bush, and then later returned to pick up my camera. But my cameras had already gone. They were all stolen. So I had to find other equipment to get my feet and begin following Prince Johnson to start with.
Okay.
On Bushra Island.
Thank you. Mr. Kanneh, what about you? How did you get started?
Oh, well, I was a very young cub reporter with Sporting Times newspaper, Sporting Life newspaper. We just did sports around the country, mostly the National League. And then I slowly got moved over to the Daily Observer, which was the #1 leading newspaper then. And I stayed there for up to the war period. And we had to close, but I was also at LU, University of Liberia, at the mass comm department. And once the war came in, before the war, we had experienced a lot of misunderstanding with the government, Samuel Doe government, the Daily Observer, that is. So Daily Observer, the newspaper offices were burned down like almost every week or every other week. I mean, close to the 1990s. So the entire 1990, we had this issue with the government. They didn't like the publications. They never liked what, the paper would report. And we had quite a number of investigative journalists. So they were ready to go deep into the doors of government and try to dig out, and they didn't like that. So the paper got burned a lot. Paper had to close by 1990. And we all just basically went our own ways. So the entire December 1990, once the paper was closed, we basically were our own. So we just started living day to day, make sure, but we were not working then because it was nothing at all. And international journalists will come around and sometimes ask for somebody, and they can't find that somebody, and then they find you or they find another person, and then you get to hang up with them. So we're doing that until the newspaper opened and became kind of a pseudo replacement for the Daily Observer. It became a much stronger and a larger newspaper in the city there. And so I worked there reporting, and by that time I was actually now reporting sports only, because Monrovia was kind of a locked in, and things seemed normal in the day in Monrovia, but by the time it was 5, 6, everybody ran home, and you could feel the heat, the presence of war. You could actually feel it. But the entirety of the war then had just focused and concentrated in what became known as Greater Liberia. So we were in the city, we were running newspapers, covering sports events in the city until late 1990. Well, not late, but maybe around April, and things started just collapsing on the city, and everything kind of shut down. So that's when I personally contacted the VOA to start to work for them. And through the U.S. mail system, I got all the communications that I needed to get started, and I got started with them. Once I was reporting, I had a bureau assigned that I was assigned to that was based in Abidjan. The correspondent there would come in Monrovia and then find me, and then we'll get to hang up together and work together. And my work just started going out there. So Reuters News Agency, which is the next big one, or basically a competitive news agency with the Associated Press. They were retiring my editor, who was the late Stanton Peabody. He was actually my editor at the Daily Observer. But he had served for Reuters as correspondent in Monrovia in Liberia for 33 years. So he was retiring. And he actually recommended me. I don't know how that happened, but he did. And I did not know he took any interest in my work and things like that, but he did. And I got started with Reuters like just during that time. So that's how I got involved. And I was quite young in my 20s, so I didn't have a lot of responsibility. I didn't care where I went. I just went, you know, once there was news there to go after, I went after it.
Wonderful. Mr. Fasuekoi, you mentioned going to Nimba to follow Prince Johnson and to report from there. Just knowing how dangerous the situation was, how did you start reporting on Prince Johnson in that area? What made rebels or the people trust you to report on them?
Just a little point of correction, actually. I didn't get to go to Nimba, actually, to cover him. It was all in Monrovia, just before, that was after the capture and murder of President Samuel Doe, actually. I didn't get to go to Nimba. I actually returned from the bush, from across Taylor's rebel lines, which used to be referred to as Greater Liberia, by way of Prince Johnson's territory, and got to Bush Road Island. And that was in sometime December 1990, you know. So once I was in Monrovia, I managed to find equipment some way, somehow, and began attending news conferences and moving around the city to capture events. And that's when I was able to follow General Prince Johnson's activities along with the rebels all over the city from early January of 1981 up to the time of Operation Octopus, when he had to surrender to ECOMOG along with his men to be airlifted out of Liberia.
If you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian Civil War, and our guest, photojournalist, author, and reporter James Fasuekoi. He calls himself the man from Gizima. And we have another journalist who covered the war, Mr. Jackson Kanneh. His friends call him Dopeway. Gentlemen, welcome again to Focus on Liberia. We want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. Please join in the conversation. We're going to be posting our phone line, phone number very shortly. But before we do that, I just want to take you back. The Liberian Civil War lasted from '89 to 2003. So from 1990 up to the point of the capture of President Doe and the coming of ECOMOG is normally called the 1990 War. And then there was renewed hostilities in 1992, codenamed Octopus, when the NPFL forces launched on Monrovia from 8 different fronts, they said, resembling an octopus. Then we have 1996, when the collective presidency decided to arrest Roosevelt Johnson of the Ulimo J faction. That's known as the 1996 War or the Butt Naked War. And the last war was started 1999 when Lord forces launched their attack from Norfolk County. That war entered the city in 2003 and saw the exile of President Charles Gange Taylor. So to really begin this, we want to first get your account. Just take your time and tell us what happened during that time. We will start with the first war, the 1990 war, and we'll go step by step until we can get to know and understand what really happened during the Liberian Civil War and what transpired, what you saw, what you reported, and really how it went. Take us back 1989, December 1989 to the capture or the coming of ECOMOG. Want to start with you, Mr. Jackson Kanneh?
Well, it's a long period of, or an extended period of time for that war, but I will give you some chronicle on what had happened before we got to where we are or where we left off. So we all know the background to all of this. People usually will go back to the 1979 arrest riot when the government was blamed for the rising prices of food commodity, especially rice, and there was big protest march. People got killed, people got arrested. Leaders of the protest got in jail. They were found guilty by some court, and they were supposed to be executed and all of that. So close to the planned execution, this coup happened in 1980 coup. Samuel Doe took over. And when mentioned, as we all know, it was bloody, and the aftermath was bloody. So the country got really divided there. Country was divided the whole time, but that just added a whole new dimension to it, to the division, because it was bloody. So you have people who were targeted based on cultural background. Let me not say tribal, because it was American Liberians that were targeted during that time. So they got, executed. Some of them lost, a lot of them lost their properties. They were forced to flee the country. Some had never been back really. And so Samuel Doe and his 17-man officers took over the country. They changed the constitution. The constitution mandate could not allow Doe to run for president, say, if he retired from the army. So he wanted to retire from the army and promised that he would turn the country over to civilian rule. But his definition of civilian rule was that I would retire from the army and become civilian, and then I run. And in order to do that, he had to change the whole constitution, the age limit, age requirements, and all of that. So he used the scholars in Liberia, including Dr. Amos Sawyer, who he appointed as the chairman for that constitution commission. And they drafted a new constitution. And that constitution is what we have today. Right. The constitution that it replaced was the constitution that we took from America, period. So it was basically modeled upon the exact format of the US Constitution, almost everything, word for word. And people thought that was too colonial, it was old. And Doe wanting to do this, to run, he was younger than, 36? And that could not qualify him to run. So he had to change that. So after that, he had to do other stuff. So they just changed the entire constitution. Anyway, so Doe got to power, and he and his men who took over started this infight. People would get accused of wanting to overthrow Doe, and the next few weeks, that person or that group of his members, they are all executed. And then they started shrinking. And there was this one member who was the commanding general. He hailed from Nimba County. The county respected him as the strongest son, the most important son to represent their county in the government. And he was third in line in this Doe revolution government. And so he got accused also of other things, but then he escaped some of it. But that beef remained. And somehow he didn't like it, Doe didn't like him either. And there was an attempt
Right, Mr. Kanneh,
Yes.
not to interrupt. I know and you are doing a beautiful thing, trying to give us some background.
Yeah.
The period is so long, so I appreciate that. But I want us, just for the sake of tonight, to start from 1989, if you can.
Oh, okay. Well, I was actually past 1989. We're already, but you're right. Okay. So anyway, so fast forward, all these backlog of beef and animosity and division, all of that built up to 1989. And on Christmas Eve, there was a revolution announced that people or Liberians had invaded the country through Nimba County from the Ivory Coast. And normally people didn't worry about it. The reason is there was this history, one they called the Nimba raid. So there was always history that Nimba and military actions or military deployment always happened in Nimba. So people in Monrovia did not see this as serious as anything other than what already usually go on in Nimba. So we just went by our business. And then it started creeping. And those were sent generals to Nimba, and they get ambushed. So this was a whole new kind of war. And people started taking note of it, that no, to ambush an entire convoy of AFL people, soldiers, this is strange, it's new. And people started watching more and getting closer. And then we started seeing people leaving. Companies are closing down in Nimba, leaving the county, coming towards Monrovia. Expatriates are all in Monrovia. Diplomats are warning their citizens not to get out of Monrovia and all of that. And once it got into Monrovia, things actually just blanked out. So that's where we got involved, because now we were journalists in Monrovia, and that's how we got all, like I told you from the beginning, how I got recruited. And then we started working from that point on. So part of the war was mostly fought. Most of the war was mostly fought in the greater Liberia, in the hinterland. But once it got in Monrovia, it got more bloody. And the thing is, there were nobody in the greater Liberia area where Charles Siller and Roosevelt and Prince Johnson had control for many, many, many months. We could not monitor what was happening. They would take you to where they want you to see. And we got by Monrovia, you get a whole different picture from relief people, from diplomats. So it just got really messy. It was hard to cover. It was spread out completely. And Monrovia was basically enclosed. You could not get out of Monrovia without some escort or some kind of paperwork to go to the other side. And that's where things actually got bad. And then it just started getting more and more, because you have sprinter groups from Chancellor. They will break up, and that breakup breaks up, and then that other breakup will break up. And before we know, we have 6 militia groups, 6 rebel groups fighting each other. Everybody wants something.
So where did you go to cover the war? Where were you during that time, from 1990 to 92? Were you going somewhere, Bombay Hills, Nimba, or Monrovia? How did you get your news? And what did you write?
Monrovia would get calm, and then later on just get tense, and then get all noisy, and everybody run again. So during that period of quiet, like I said, I was, a background with sports, so I would travel with the national teams and stuff like that, and like IE. And this trip was for Kinshasa, Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So we were there in 1992 when Octopus had started. And so when we flew into Abidjan, we're told we can't get to Monrovia because there's war and things. And the next day they say, oh, you know what, you can learn. And then there was no rival fee again. Roberts International was completely closed down. So Spriggs down in Cinco, Spriggs Field, was where we used then. And so we landed. And once we landed, I just basically was busy from that point on. There was Octopus. Octopus was the military code that Charles Sutter had used to attack the city from every angle, and that there was no entrance. The only thing that was left open was a wild sea in Monrovia, the ocean. That was how he coded that operation.
Wow.
And so Monrovia was attacked from every angle, excluding the sea part where ECOMOG controlled. And so ECOMOG soldiers really, really, really got killed. A whole lot of them. By that time, ECOMOG had been included with Senegalese, with different countries that came in to help. So ECOMOG was much stronger. But Chancellor seemed very stubborn and strong, recruiting young kids as old as 10, or as young as 10, 12. They were recruiting them and giving them guns to just go fight ECOMOG. And a lot of them got ambushed. A lot of them got killed. Some got seized and just, taken to Monrovia, given to the Red Cross, something like that. And so I got involved. At that time, I was reporting actively now for Reuters, and I would go into different parts of the country. I would go to Bumi. I would fly on helicopters where you have to waive your liability to the UN. Like, we're on the helicopter. If something happened, I take responsibility. Don't worry about it. But I would still go just to get a story. And so I stayed in there until Charles Sutter got elected before I left.
All right. And we'll come to that period. Let me go to James. James, 1990, the war is coming to Monrovia. When did you do your first reporting, and how you did it, and what did you see?
Just before coming to that, let me give a little background.
Okay.
So I left my Gunnersville home with my uncle, his wife, and the rest of the family. We sought refuge to Fendel. We were at Fendel for several weeks. And then when August 24 approached, there was announcement at the Fendel University campus that everybody would go out to demonstrate against the intervention of the ECOMOG forces against their arrival. So here we were on the eve of August 24. We marched, were put out of the burial homes we had there. We marched in the thousands, and there came the foreign media filming us with our frail faces. And we marched denouncing ECOMOG, This was a strong mandate from the Gange Taylor. If you stay indoor, the rebels would shoot you on sight. So that's how serious it was. So we all had to come out. We marched. And then eventually, after ECOMOG landed, situation became terrible at Fendel. People dying, indiscriminate killings, and all of that on the basis of tribes. I mean, they accuse anybody and just kill them, whether you were from the wrong tribe or so, or not. So I decided to leave. I escaped from there with some family members. We went somewhere in Johnsonville, behind Bentor. We lived there in the village for some time. And then in December 1990, that's when another rebel group from Taylor came very aggressive with their rebel commander being a Loma man. I didn't know at first he was Loma. So they captured us, we who were displaced. At that time, it was two Gizi guys and myself Fire, and what the other guy name? Fire, and the other guy, I just forgot his name. So they interrogated us for hours. We went through, some sort of torture and all of that. And they told us not to leave the village. They said they suspected that we were Prince Johnson's agents, because most of Prince Johnson's agents, fighters, as they thought, were highly intelligent, and all of that. And they look at us, they said they were not too pleased with us. But the blessing was that they let us go after all the interrogations and all of that. The Loma guy later told me that they will keep us to wait for their commander to come from Todi. He would decide whether we will live or not. And I asked him that, what do you think would be his decision? He said, well, sometimes we get somewhere. If we are not pleased, we kill people, those who want to take to serve in the army with us, we take them. He said, but the way I see it, our commander might even decide to give you guys arms to join us. He said, you see, this war not finishing now. And I acted like I know nothing. I said, really? He said, oh yeah. He said, in fact, I wanted to capture Samuel Doe right in Swedru during his birthday. And little did he know that I was one of the 4 journalists selected to work on Samuel Doe's birthday magazine. The magazine had been published, but it had not been distributed. Mind you, my names, my stories, my photographs were all in this magazine. My heart began to beat, and I decided to act brave. And I just listened to him. He went on. And he said, let me tell you another thing. Do you even know I am Loma? I said, no. He said, now, this is how we capture our enemies. You hadn't know I was a Loma, and I was asking you where you came from. You said you're from Zaza. You started naming quarters. You went to school at ATS, Zaza Central High School, all of that. And you even named people in the quarters, like Burma quarters, where I live, and new people. You said, had you not been familiar with Zaza, or had you not been telling me the truth, I would have known you were lying, and possibly you were an enemy, and we'll kill you. That's how we kill. I said, but mind you, at this point, you couldn't tell any of them that you are from a border towns, because they classify all of these people from the border town, like my home Yela town, that they were all Guineans, you see. But I was born in Zaza, and I went there to school and all of that, so I knew everything about Zaza. So that saved me out of that. But in any case, that night, when they released us temporarily to go to bed, we got together, the 3 of us, we decided we have to leave. These guys are out to kill. And we agreed. Early 4:00 a.m., we jumped out. We took, little few things with us, a gallon of oil at that time. You couldn't think about picking up a lot of things. All my little valises I carried to the village, I had to just forget about everything. So we left under the moonlight, and we ran into an ambush right now far from the village. Some group jumped ahead of us, and another group jumped behind us when we looked. It was a straight road, but the road wasn't brushed. It was grassy. At this time, imagine there's nobody clearing roads. So we look ahead, we look behind, we jump in the bush, we scatter. Later, we reconnected because we had lived in the area for almost 6 months or more. We knew the terrain. So later we reconnected somewhere in a village not far from Prince Johnson's front line with the MPFL. So we got there, we went on to Prince Johnson's side, and we crossed. We came to Morovia, and that's how I reorganized myself. When the inquiry was being organized, they asked me to join them. I said, no, I'm still not really prepared to work, to go out and work. I need to find my families. And later, they contacted me for the 2nd time. And then the 3rd time, through Gabriel Williams, who came and said to me, look, I work with you, Fasuekoi. You and I work on Gaswaya Minto's paper, the Duba. We all ran for our life in the last minute. You Len Eugene Nangbe, Joe Mumba, you know, I know the risks we took. I trust your ability to come join us. That's how I went to join the inquiry, and we began operating.
Thank you. There's a question here on Facebook. How, from Ansu Dualo, how was the actual coverage done, considering the chaos and belligerence of the rebel forces? Did you carry a special pass, or how did you get to go cover the story?
Good question. Actually, when you are a war correspondent and doing the right thing, it is a good thing to do the right thing. Remember, for example, I am from the Loma ethnic group. And here, for example, I was covering Yilimo, consisted of dominated by Mandingos, who were also fighting my ethnic Lomas in Lofa. It was a difficult situation. I sometimes met other friends, people who knew me in the community before the war and during the war, like Crown people, you know, not even my own Loma people, asking me, what are you doing? Are you stupid? People are fighting war. They are fighting against your people, and you're following, you know, Mandingo going to Topper every night, going to swim, going to, you know, Poor River and all of that. Why are you taking risks? You know, but you see, what happened is that I was reporting nothing but facts to the best of my ability. I reported with objectivity. I didn't know till people began requesting me to go visit with them to the front line. Do you know how I got to know Francois Fasuekoi? I was at the inquiry one day, and he drove by with some of his rebel fighters. He told me, I'm here to take you to Kakata. He said, he smiled at me. He said, I have seen what you've been writing, the report you've been doing on Yilimo, you know, Yilimo K and the other faction. He said, you are doing well. You have done well. Excuse me for the Mandingo. He said, and here are your Loma people. So I need you to go with me now to Kakata. You know, while some of my friends, inquiry friends around were hesitating, I just said yes. You see, so that was how I just ran home, picked up my bag, got ready, and Mr. Philip Wieser, Banasaki, Slawatopa gave me the green pass to go. And that's how I went. We got to Kakata. Oh, it was quite exciting. You know, here, the night, we spend the night awake. They dance for me. They play, you know, singing the day we go to Lofa. That was the Lofa Defense Force, the Yilimo J, the AFL, a combination of 5 rebel factions, including the AFL, had joined together. And they sang and danced, you know, like entertaining me and all of that. And then I almost shed tears when I looked. I saw a boy whose name starts with P. I don't want to call his entire name. This little boy grew up in my hand in Yela. Behold, he had been fighting for the MPFL. And the Lofa Defense Forces had just captured him at Kanneh in a battle with MPFL. They brought him, he was there. I saw him, and I asked him, Pipi, what are you doing here? And he began to tell me stories. He said, oh, I've been fighting for the MPFL. They just captured me and brought me. He said, so, you know, that our own people, that's how, you know, they decided not to kill me. I said, oh, thank God you are here. And people were surprised. You know, we began talking. So from there, the next day we went to the front line. I covered them. We traveled to Kanneh and all of that till we almost fell in an ambush, but I came back to Kakata. Again, to answer the fellow's question, besides that, later, George Bole group sent for me from my reporting the same way. You see, I had been to Congo, Tottenham area there, Mano River area, where the landslide took place. I reported on a fight between Yilimo K and the K5 unit of General Amayulu. And I also focus on the relief, the humanitarian need. That's one area where some of us used to focus a lot, besides the actual physical fighting between the rebels. We're seeing people malnourished, people dying of hunger. I saw people laying in the street in Todmabra. I shed tears, no food, before relief could get there during the Yulimo K war. So these things were happening. So sometimes we decided to focus more. I personally decided more on the humanitarian need. You know, so they were seeing these things motivated by them. So George Bole Group sent me. They had come to the inquiry office. They didn't see me. So they left word there. I went out for lunch. When I came back, my staff told me, oh, LPC guys came here in truck looking for you. So I said, where are they? They said, oh, are you not hiding? I said, hide for what? I'm sure they got something for me or something to tell me or want to take me somewhere. So I stood around the corner in front of the old inquiry office on Kira Street. And before we would look, there they came, they drove a kind of aggressive way and parked the car. And they said, they called somebody's name, whose name I don't want to call, a female, who was with George Bole and the LPC. She had known me personally. You know, when the war was raging on, she used to tell me, she said, Fasuekoi, Taylor now out for peace. I've been to all the peace conferences. We all have to join hands to fight the MPFL. So when you see me I began writing a series of articles. I didn't trust the MPFL. Plus, what I saw, that's how I was motivated to begin writing series of articles. I couldn't stop. You see, he had confided in me that they were not out for peace. At all costs, Taylor just wanted to be president without going through the process. So this person was with George Bole. She had sent for me along with George Bole. So that's how I jumped in a pickup and we went. The next thing, I found myself in River Self. The River Self. Guess who I saw while they're covering the activities of the MPFL? One of my cousins who grew up in the Fasuekoi household with me, you know, her initial is T. I almost shed tears. She called me by the name. My late mother used to call me dr.nya, you know, the spoiled one, baby. You know, people who grew with me in the town, that's how they called it. So when she called that name dr.nya, you know, tears almost came from my eyes. She said, we are fighting war here. You see me? She said, in fact, I just had a newborn baby. dr.nya, you have to carry this baby in town. To town when you're going back. Say we are fighting war. And I began thinking, I said, what kind of war is this? You know, and the baby was there. She gave me the baby, handled the baby, passed the baby over, but she was with Ruth Atella. I have known Ruth Atella before this point, getting to this point very well, you know. So she was there cooking. They were all armed, you know, to the teeth. And I left there trouble more. I didn't even share the information with the people who carry me, that this person and I are related and we grew up in the same Fasuekoi household. It is only today I'm even talking about it. So that's how the war was actually dead. But in all, my reporting, you know, get me to go to places where I shouldn't have gone. So that is why objectivity is very important. My focus was to see how the war could end. I hated to see police taking side. You know, I didn't want that. Or people who were taking the war personally. I only wanted to see peace and wanted to work towards the general welfare of the country so that the country would come back together. Taking side didn't matter because I knew that won't serve the interests of the country. So that's how things went with me.
Thank you. Mr. Kanneh, were you present for atrocities?
Well, yeah, I not within it, but after, yes, I will go there and actually witness aid workers moving bodies. My first incident was the Lutheran Church massacre, where uh, some 700 um, displaced people from Nimba had gone to seek refuge because they were being targeted around the city. Just right, the Chancellor rebels were closing in Monrovia, and some of the Liberians were taken from their homes. They will go in their homes, the prominent ones, and then they get them out. They disappear. And but then you could actually, you will see dead bodies in Monrovia, like the head is chopped off, headless bodies, uh, bodiless heads. You see them all around. The newspapers will report it. And so about 700 people are gathered in this Lutheran church down in Cinco. And it's one night, the allegations is that some of those soldiers had gone there. And the only reason for that is they were the only one that controlled the city at that time. So they said they had gone there and massacred over 600 people. When I got there, there was a guy, an older man. He from Nimba. He used to work for the Daily Observer. Like he would run air. I don't remember exactly. He was never a journalist. He wasn't administrative or something, but he would run errands like with a newspaper or printing press or something like that. Old guy. And we met him. He told us that he was here with his son. They had killed his son. So his son fell, the body fell on top of him. That's how he survived, because he just pretended he's dead. So that was my first major and shocking scene of any of the massacres. Some other stuff that I saying was the clashes between Ecomoc and Ulimo. Well, now it was between the Ulimo faction group when they broke up, and Ecomoc had tried to go in there in between to split them up, and that's when Ecomoc got involved. And so Ecomoc soldiers were killed indiscriminately, civilians were killed, and there's a camera guy who used to work for the Reuters news agency, another Liberian guy called Mark Johnson. He's in Delaware now. So Mark and I went to the Ecomoc press office to ask whether the road was okay for us to go. And they said yes. I think it was Frank Akinola, the guy I was just chatting with today on Facebook. He's now in Nigeria. He's written a book, The Ecomoc Story. I think anyone who is interested in that conflict should pick it up. It's very interesting. So they told us, yeah, you guys can go. So I drove. I said, Mark, let's go there. So you're the camera guy. I can go with you. Let's just ride and see. So we drove up Bombing, and the whole town is quiet. And we're seeing some Ulimo K people, the large Nkrumah Ulimo. They basically succeeded in controlling the city of Bombing. So they would take us around and say, there's a lot of fighting going on here. It's calmed down now, but, you can take a look. And it took us near the General Hospital in Tubmanburg. That was my first time going in there. And man, I seen bodies everywhere around the hospital. Young, old, women, men, boys, girls. Ecomoc soldiers in the street, the main street in front, the main store that's in Tubmanburg there. There's some popular store used to be there back in the day. There's a Ecomoc truck that's overturned. There's a lot of bullets and all kinds of things went on there. And it was bad. So Mark got some pictures, and I interviewed some people real quickly, and then we headed back to the city. So those are the things we saw. But on the previous question, you will go with Ecomoc in some of the cases if they felt it wasn't okay for you to go, and sometimes it wasn't not that you were scared to go, but there was no way you could go in. The other side would not let you in out of Monrovia to just let you in. They will not. So it's either their commanders will come in town looking for publicity on what they've done. And like I said from the beginning, they will show you what they want you to see. It's not some wide open thing that you go and just, rove over the place. They will want you to see what exactly is it that they want you to see. So it was one instant after all of that. Well, before that whole split with Ulimo, they have fought Taylor in Vonjama, and they succeeded in driving Taylor people out of Lofa, like clear Lofa completely. And that became a big news. It's international news. This is for the first time Taylor is out of Lofa since 1990. And this is like 94. So they called this big press conference in Bombing that we should all go in there. And we went there, and Lai Command told us all his narratives he could as to how they control Lofa. And he said, on Thursday, you want to come in and actually go and see? Who want to go and see? I said, I want to go and see. So, all right, whoever want to go see, journalists coming, and a lot of guys volunteer to go in. So me being hungry for story, I got on the road right away by myself, straight into Bombing. And when I got there, waited the whole day, evening time, there's no other reporters show up from Monrovia. So I said, well, you know what? I'm not going back to Monrovia. I want to go see Lofa. And he gave me a couple of his commanders. He said, you can go with them. We could not go straight Lofa. We had to get into Sierra Leone, into Kanneh, into Sabrema, into Dodo, and then got into Vahon. And I found myself in Vahon, like all the way in the back of Lofa, all the way up there, 1994. So we got in there, and then they took us into Vonjama and other places, and I saw that they're taking over Lofa. So that was what usually will happen when either their commanders will come in town, they want you to go, you may go with them, you're not forced to. ECOMOG trips where the one we will usually want to go to, will go in there. But if anything that happens around the control area of ECOMOG, you're allowed to go on your own. But yes, we have press badges, your organization badges you will carry. You have to carry all of those things around your car, around yourself, your microphone, your cameras, your jacket, just so you look distinctly a journalist. That way, nobody can mistakenly just shoot you without, any cause.
So, Mr. Kanneh,
yes.
You mentioned like the Lutheran Church massacre, and also there was a massacre in Vahon, the massacre in Bombing, as you said. So you were always getting there after it was, carried out. Did you know exactly who did it? Like in the case of a Lutheran Church, I know there were stories published, but how did you find out exactly what happened and who perpetrated such atrocity?
So 1990, I was staying with Mr. Stanton Peabody, the late Peabody. He took me along with some of his international colleagues. So we're all up on Mount Point, and we heard about this massacre because the relief people, the embassy, everybody was right on Mount Point. And they told us about this. And that's when I went there with some reporters. I wasn't even writing them because Peabody was active and the foreign journalists were in town. So my job was to just go with them. And that's the first basic thing that I saw, not basic, the most important massacre that I actually seen in my life. That was the first one. So it will always happen. And the reason is they were very territorial, those Malaysian groups. So you control this part of the country, whatever happens there, it's really you. You cannot say somebody came and infiltrated here and killed this number of people with guns. That's the whole thing. The Lutheran Church were usually carry out two ways. They use cutlasses, knives, and guns. Cattle Camp, Duper Road, Vahon, and other places, Nimba, they could do, those were all guns people use to slaughter people. And yes, you will always go there after it's happened, because you know how many, nobody knows. Those are refugees living day to day. They live there for months. They ain't expecting anything. And then one night, whatever had happened, one night they just all get attacked and get killed. So we would go in there and see some of these massacres, and then mass burial was the most gruesome part that I don't want to remember. You know, they dig big hole and just dump everybody in there, and flying bullets and bombs killing people in groups. They just send it, for example, towards a refugee camp, a displacement camp, and it will land anywhere. And once it landed, it killed whoever was in the way. And this happens so many times. Like, why civilians have been targeted and not? Because they were all separated. So you can't just go and attack. Chancellor control everywhere else, but Monrovia, bombing Cape Mount, and nearby areas. So he could not cross over to get to Cape Mount. He had to first see Prince Johnson, who was in between them. And Prince Johnson wasn't targeting, setting other people. So by the time Ulimo came in, Prince Johnson was mostly a Monrovia guy. So they were separated. So massacres that happen in territories that a particular rebel group control, that's how relief agencies were able to investigate or find out that, to make sure that these massacres were committed by people who control those areas. And, there was no other way you put it.
Sure. If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the Liberian Civil War. Our guest, James Fasuekoi, a photojournalist, and Jackson Kanneh. To join the discussion, you can call us at 706-684-0392. Again, the number is 706-684-0392. Mr. Fasuekoi, just as a background, give us a chronology of the warring factions and how these people break into the fighting groups that we all know of as part of the Liberian Civil War. There's a caller on the line.
Thank you.
Caller, hold on one second. Go ahead, James.
Well, when you talk about giving the chronology of the warring faction, what exactly are you looking for?
Right, just tell us the names of all those warring factions that were fighting. People are joining the call who may not have the background that we have.
Oh, okay. To begin with, remember the war started with the Taylor rebel faction, the MPFL. When the MPFL seized much part of Liberia and then reached Monrovia, and eventually they began targeting, certain Liberians, including the Mandingos, and then which led to the eventual departure of most of our countrymen and women, like the Mandingos, the Crowns, and of course, most other Liberians who were affected seriously by the war. Other people decided to take arms in their own defense, as we saw. So that is how the mainstream Ulimo was formed in Sierra Leone. I do not want to give date and year. I will look up there, but from mainstream Ulimo came other faction. When mainstream Ulimo entered Todmanburg or Liberia, eventually they split into two, giving us Ulimo J and Ulimo K. You see, and then later came the LPC, and then we had the AFL in the south at the Barclay Training Center, Military Training Center, BTC. And you have a section of the AFL also in Camp Shuffling. And then came other warring factions later, like the Lofa Defense Force. The Lofa Defense Force has an interesting story that most Liberians are yet to understand. There was another group that actually rose up in Zaza, and it all began along the Guinean border towns like Koyama, Koyama and other places. They actually began the war, so as to protect, the Loma ethnic group from that end that they accused Haji Kuruma forces of carrying, atrocious war against them. So they were there. And one guy who was one of their early commanders, who later came to Monrovia and joined the Monrovia side of the LDF, and eventually ended also fought for LPC, Robert Waraba, whom I met and interviewed, commonly called as General Gore. He told me of the existing and of the Lofa Defense Force across the border, how they started and all of that. People do not know this story.
Right.
But only the Monrovia and the Lofa Defense Force from Bombay Hills joined the coalition forces with Roosevelt Johnson's Limoje, the AFL, and
James, hold your thought. Let me get a call on the line. The calls are too many now coming in. Call out your name and where you're calling from.
Oh, thank you. My name is Christopher Dawasi. I'm calling from Fargo, North Dakota.
Chris, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question or comment?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to our guests in studio tonight. My question is, do you think we Liberians have problem with telling the truth? I mean, we Liberian love falsehood and rumors and spreading rumors. Do you think that what we are experiencing today in this under this leadership of President George Weah, do you think that we have similar thing happen in the past? I mean, like, for example, I'll give you an example. When we heard in Liberia that the government of Samuel Doe at that time went into Nima County and buried 400 Liberian children, 400 children in a particular well, in a particular town. But since then, we have not found the particular town and the particular well, and so that we can do certain analysis and proper investigation as to how many children can fill a well. The bones matter, how long bones can survive. I mean, I think Liberian, most of the time we spread rumors and falsehood, and sometimes it becomes a problem for the entire country. And we are seeing it again under the George Weah administration.
Okay.
And they don't like the president in power. Yeah. But to just spread news and lies and rumors that will create chaos and problems for the masses, I think it is wrong.
Thank you.
And for you people, if y'all can find time to ask this question again, to go back to say, like, we heard about the well, we heard about all these things. Let's put some facts.
Let ask them. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
James and Jackson, we heard stories about all these things that were happening during the war. The caller is asking, for instance, the story about the government forces burying kids in well. Sometimes we heard about the mass killing in the Nima mounds. What's the truth of those stories? Jackson, let me start with you.
As far as I can tell, and my knowledge can go, I did not establish any particular event of such, other than what the caller called rumor. We heard about it. It's been somehow.
Caller has to.
Caller, please lower your volume.
So we heard about it. I particularly have not gone in there to look at it. I've not seen a detailed report that points to that event, the time, some pictures, anything detailed to it might be somewhere out there. I'm not seeing. I've heard it mentioned. I've heard it mentioned in official document. I have not seen a full report of it or full account, like pointing to a particular date and time and place. But yeah, we heard all of that. Yeah, we heard rumors like that.
Mr. Fasuekoi, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah. First of all, I will show you this paper, the public agenda. And then I will show you a flash of an article I did in 2007. You will see the headline, a look at another side of General Charles Julu. General Charles Julu was at the center of the Nimba raid, and eventually a report came out that in fact he was one of those responsible for allegedly burying hundreds of Nimba kids in a well. You see, the Liberian media has been doing well, and I want to be grateful and thank them. But I think we need to do more, if not only the media, but also writer. That's the only thing we don't do in Liberia. For example, a few years ago, a man set out to investigate one woman who was traveling around the world, receiving audiences, speaking at large gatherings about the 9/11 New York Tower that came down. Behold, this woman wasn't there. You know, she wrote a book titled "I Was There." You know, after having gone around the world making millions, you know, serving as motivational speaker. Guess what? An American rose up and began following her activity, investigating, only for the man to find out that she was lying. Nowhere she was around ground zero when the towers came down or when the plane hit. So he came out to write his book, The Woman Who Was Not There. I wish Liberians were aggressive, especially in academia, to really do investigative reporting, especially the media, but we haven't done much. So most Liberian journalists do not like to write about controversial issues. You see, for me personally, that's one area I have stepped out to challenge myself. I have written this that I just showed you, another side of General Julu, pertaining to that Nimba well incident where he allegedly buried children. During the time I wrote the article,
so you are
I was looking around talking to AFL soldiers who may have worked with Julu.
You are saying that's not true. You are saying the story is not true. I
wrote the story from from an independent point of view and left it to the public to judge. But in any case, I came down to believing that some of the stories were fictitious. They had no truth in it. For example, Julu's alleged presence at the Lutheran Church, his alleged participation. I wrote another part of the series that took me to Freetown. People who read it, somebody who was with Julu when the massacre allegedly took place at the Lutheran Church, wrote me an email. I used that email, took quote from it. I wrote another article that Julu had an alibi during the Lutheran Church. But in any case, a lot of rumors goes on in Liberia. Yeah, and some of them do not hold true. At the time I was writing this article on Julu, I had challenged people, including those who were in the AFL that worked in Nimba, that served in Nimba with General Julu, to come out and speak to me, and assuring them that the old order, the old regime has gone. There was nothing for them to fear. After all, we too are human beings. we who are journalists and writers, let them come out and speak. They kept promising, but they didn't come out to tell the full story. Probably they know that the incident did happen or they participated. That could be another fear. But in any case, I wrote the article. So in my own belief, I got my own doubt that if something like that happened, I probably believe there might have been some exaggeration added to it. But still, I cannot come to a conclusion. It is something good for journalists to really pursue, if possible, and investigate to get the truth. Like
thank you.
In Liberia.
Thank you. There's a caller on the line. Caller, your name and where you calling from? Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah, so my name is Andrew. I'm calling from EA.
Andrew, your question or comment?
Yeah, and I have three questions for my uncle in the studio there. Yeah. I really want to understand the actual story about the capturing of the late President Samuel Kanneh.
Okay.
Because some Liberians are saying that the Ecomos that were in Liberia at that time, they received a bribe of $10 million before they turn the president over to Prince Johnson. I want to know how true it is. Okay. And then my second question has to do with the massacre to the St. Peter Lutheran Church. I want to know whether the president, the one that gave the command to kill the innocent people in the church, or the military take their own military operation to carry on the massacre. And then my third question has to do with, I really want to know how the Lima Ray came about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can take your answer off the air. Guys, 3 questions. The capture of President Doe, the massacre of the Lutheran Church, and Lima Ray. Who go first?
So, okay. So, all right. Let me take a look at the capture. I wasn't there, and that is of the late Samuel Doe. The best I heard came from Miss Elizabeth Blunt earlier this year when she was in Philadelphia. What she told the federal court was her account, and this is I'm doing this completely off my top of my head. President Doe had gone to the port to meet with General Quino, the then peak commander of ECOMOG, Ghana. And while they're in this office, Liz Blunt is waiting outside to see if she could get a word as a journalist, get a word of what the meeting is about, what they discussed, were they discussing Doe's departure, did he say yes, he will leave, stuff like that nature. And came in a group of army guys. First there was some shooting, but Prince Johnson made his way up onto where the meeting was. And a soldier tried to tell him that the general was in a meeting. And I think he started asking for Samuel Doe. Where's Samuel Doe? Where's Samuel Doe? And then they told him that, oh, the door is closed there, but the general is in a meeting. And he did not respect that. He busted into that room. And that's when they have a few words that he exchanged with Doe. And nobody actually know what happened in that room, but there was exchange there. And after that, Doe was shot in the leg and then taken into their car and then they drove off. So that was the best I heard about it. There are a lot of different versions of that story, but I will believe my most senior idol in journalism, over anybody or over anything else. So that was the account that I got. As far as the Lutheran massacre, I already told you the part that I know. The Nimba raid was born out of a fake coup, alleged fake coup, a fake coup, but it was a fake coup d'etat that was linked to elements from Nimba. And Charles Julu was not in government previously before, though he was the Plant Protection Force commander there over the Lamco mining company. So that's like a private security guy, but he was a commander. And Doha brought him in to serve as some general and things like that. And the Nimba raid failed. That's when I heard that, that's when we learned that Samuel Doe sent Julu up in Nimba to follow who was involved. Okay. And the other side of the story I heard was Julu was alleged to have massacred a lot of people in Nimba. And the reason this rumor gave was Julu's own compound was attacked during that coup, the fake coup time, that event. During the event of that fake coup, his compound was attacked, and I think his sons or first son or some relatives his were massacred or killed in there. A couple of people in that building, a compound. So the rumor is that he went there with vengeance to kill whoever. He didn't care because he's lost family members, including his son, in that compound. So that's the part I heard. But that was the reason the Nimba raid happened, because the fake coup in Monrovia, don't chase that coup to find the element, to find the origin of it into Nimba. And that's where that Nimba raid happened. And that Nimba raid came back as part of the reason why Charles Taylor came and why he used Nimba to launch the 1990 war, because people running Nimba were not friends with Doe any longer. The Kwankwa relations with Doe is gone. Kwankwa is killed by Doe. All of that animosity has built up, and Charles Taylor felt that that was the right point of entry he could use to get into Nimba, to get into Liberia. And my personal story, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I had gone with Invincible 11 to the Ivory Coast. As you know, anybody who follows soccer or sports with the French-speaking countries, they don't play right. So the game was scheduled in Abidjan. By the time we got in Abidjan, they said, now you got to go to Bouaké, which is like from Monrovia to Harper. That's kind of distance. Anyway, so we're sleeping. The late John Vambo, who was a colleague of mine, the Daily Observer, was a reporter. He taking me somewhere because he knew Abidjan. That's my first visit in Abidjan. He knew Abidjan very well. So he's taking me to some Liberian family where he stayed. So he said, we'll sleep here. Then he gave me a room with a mattress. He said, you know, you and one fellow would just share that mattress. You know, it's almost daybreak. Don't worry. You know, just... Anyway, while laying down in there, this fellow kept asking me, you know, where I'm from. That is what I do in Monrovia and all of that. And I started telling him about the Daily Observer that I work for. And, you know, he started taking interest in how Samuel Doe is burning the Daily Observer. The next morning, John Bamba asked me, well, you guys didn't sleep? I said, yeah, man, this guy, we didn't sleep. This guy kept asking all night, we just talked. And he said, do you know that guy? I said, no. He said, that was, he just came back, but I would think about it. But this guy was involved with the revolution. He was one of the first commanders. He was involved with Kwankwa. After the Kwankwa coup failed and Kwankwa got captured, okay, Joe Wally. He said that was Joe Wally. And in Liberia at that time, everybody knew his name, but very few have seen him. Because I was younger when he went LU, and so I wasn't familiar with him. The face, I didn't know him. Young Bambo said that was the guy you were on the mattress with last night. And this guy had fled Liberia after Doe captured Kwankwa. He came with Kwankwa. He was probably the next commander to Kwankwa. And once Kwankwa got captured, he fled. So he's in Abidjan, he's between Abidjan and Burkina Faso, where they're training people. He's recruiting and training. But he didn't tell me anything like that. He only told me this would be over soon. That Samido is burning your newspapers and arresting journalists. It would be over soon. And that's all I knew about that link. So he linked that later on to the Nimba raid. And that's how when the whole thing unfolded, I started connecting those doubts. And that night, this guy was trying to give me a hint I wasn't following because I didn't know. So that's about, what I know of the Nimba raid.
Thank you. Jim, before you come in, I have a caller on the line, and then you can combine the two. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
My name is James. I'm calling from New Jersey.
James, your question or comment?
Well, I just want to make a comment here. It's very interesting that I'm listening to Kanneh and Jim Fasuekoi. I'm calling from New Jersey, James.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make a comment here because it's very that I'm seeing James Fasuekoi and Kanneh, live discussing on the real war. To be honest with you, it was not because of the role played by James Fasuekoi, Kanneh, and many other journalists, Martha Washington, Ulu Kaiser. The environment you see on the road today with ISIS, because these are guys, including the guy on the phone here, these are people who sacrifice their lives to bring to the public, locally, internationally, the atrocities that are committed in our country, for which people were forced to succumb to the importance of making sure that there's peace in our country. But what is so appalling about this whole thing is today, when you go to Liberia, you see journalists who are on the other society who project.
James, can you lower your Facebook or your TV, whatever is in the background?
Okay.
I got nothing else on besides this.
When you go to Liberia, you still see journalists are on the other side are projected. The destruction of our country, still in power, they are making decisions. And for those of us who were involved in this war as journalists, it's traumatizing. And so, again, I just want to commend Fasuekoi and Kanneh for coming public, expressing or talking about the experiences of journalism in Liberia. Because, again, the role you guys play, the role Jackson Kanneh, Jim Fasuekoi play in our country during the war, if they are not done so, Liberia will not be the way it is today. I mean, it's just clear, it's just significant. So I just want to applaud you, the presenter, for providing them the opportunity to come live and discuss what transpired in our country and the role they play as journalists.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Okay.
Mr. Fasuekoi, that's your colleague, James Momo from New Jersey, commending the both of you and all other journalists that cover the war significantly. So you can respond to the first caller.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you to Momo for his coming for his participation. I will begin with the Nimba raid, since that started before the Lutrin massacre and the capture of Samiado. The Nimba raid took place somewhere in 1983. At that time, I was an 11th grade student. And because I was having that taste for journalism, that's how I began following news, actually. And to my understanding, these were disgruntled militants, Nimba elements that went on ravaging Nimba. They describe it as an internal coup of fighting, and I tend to kind of wonder if it was intended to be a coup, why didn't they actually face the capital or move to the capital? Instead, they went up country, causing, this kind of upheaval that later led to many people being hunted down and killed by the regime at the time. But in any case, the Nimba raid, again, based on my years of investigation with regard to General Julu's link, I found that Julu was not in Nimba from my investigation. He was in fact in Ghana. And the Nimba raiders, as we later framed them, went to General Julu's house because of previous disagreement they had with General Julu. They went ahead and killed a foster child, that was living with Julu. You know, all other occupants in Julu's house fled, you see. But in any case, I'm told that they raided Julu house, the Nimba raider, looted whatever they could loot and killed this innocent boy that was living with Julu. Julu was in Ghana, then attending an event with his wife. You see, that is how much I can tell about the Nimba raid. But in any case, these were Nimbanians, disgruntled Nimbanians who took upon themselves to cause, to carry out more like a revenge, because General Julu was the head of the PPF for the LAMCO at the time. And he was in his own rights, as many people who lived in Nimba at that time, including Manos and Kio, have told me, like a president in his own right. So it was like he was like a governor up there doing his own thing, and many people didn't like that. And because of the fact that the government was being dominated by a crown, so it was like Julu was doing his own thing and walking away free, scot-free. So that prompted the ravaging, the revenge against Julu. Back to the Lutheran Church massacre. Before the Lutheran Church massacre, there were a lot of signals. There were a lot of warnings coming out, but people didn't pay attention to them. Neither the United Nations that was present in Liberia at that time. And I remember when Unity, Joe Mulumba, Len Eugene Nangbe, who is now Minister of Information, along with Gas Wayamento and Gabriel Williams, ran the Duba newspaper. Unity and I continued. We covered the United Nations, the displacements of those of our citizens that were coming from Nimba around the country, around Morovia.
Mr. Fasuekoi.
Yeah.
I apologize. Just give me 1 minute. Let's get a caller from Australia, since it's on long distance. You've been trying to get in.
Okay.
Caller, your name?
My name is Ahmad Jaluka. I'm calling from Perth, Australia.
All right. Question or comment?
I did have a comment concerning my brother on your show, the journalist who wrote all the articles concerning Chaju and everything that happened in Liberia.
Okay.
My comment is mostly has to do with journalism in Liberia. Because coming up as a kid in Liberia, we look up to journalists for inspiration. I once upon a time was a student journalist in a high school in Liberia, so most of the time we're looking up to the media agency for inspiration. But when I grew up, I got to realize that most of the reporting that was done in Liberia was done based on favoritism, and most of the time, the journalism was done in Liberia. Let me just give a scenario. Once upon a time, when I was living in Minnesota, I came across a journalist that was a sport reporter in Liberia. And we were involved in some kind of argument concerning what was going on in Liberia at the time. And he made a comment that actually I was very, very unsatisfied with. And like this. Somebody asking that George Weah at the time, who is the current president now for Liberia, did a lot of things for Liberia. And through their newspaper, I don't know what newspaper was that because I've left Liberia for a very long time. Through their newspaper who were promoting George Weah, said that George Weah was taking care of Liberian national team at the time. But that journalist came out and said, most of the stories that were written by their newspaper was not true.
Okay.
Because George Weah was a 800-pound gorilla. So to myself, and I said to him, I said, oh, so you're a journalist, and you're not just a member of that team. You're a major writer in the country. Instead of speaking the truth, that should be the ethical part of journalism, speaking truth to your people. If you ignore that, just because somebody's a 800-pound gorilla,
okay.
you feel like people with different information who make them believe that George Weah was taking care of our country's soccer team. So all this I'm trying to say is that in Liberia, because the journalists, like the brother said, are so afraid to say the truth, they turn most of the time to say stories that will put them in a neutral position between both the government and the consumer of their newspapers. So this becomes the most reliable news in Liberia.
We hope not.
Also running our country.
Right. Sometimes we have bad journalists. You please conclude so that we can move on to the next caller.
Yeah, so basically I'm saying what my brother said that is the truth.
All right.
The media agency in Liberia has to come to a point where it has to be independent body. Like if you were talking about the investigation done in America about a lady that was going around speaking on behalf of 9/11 victims.
Right.
America, the media agencies in America are independent, and they are giving that authority to investigate for themselves.
Thank you.
In Liberia, journalists are most of the time working for the government because they feed through the government.
Right. All right. Thanks for those comments. And
thank you for allowing me on your program, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Fasuekoi, we can continue, especially with the Lutheran massacre. There's people here on Facebook really interested in that story.
Okay. Let me finish that, and then again throw a comment on that guy, on the last speaker views. The Lutheran massacre, as I was saying, there were warning signs, but the United Nations, there should have been more responsible, for protecting or creating corridors or conditions to protect our people who were coming from Nimba, our Liberian, citizens that were coming from Nimba, who became vulnerable because of the war situation, the political dynamics, the ethnic and cultural dynamics. We understand the whole thing. They first gathered at the United Nations compound right near Bernard gas station, opposite what is now CDC's headquarters. That's where the United Nations headquarters used to be. So I remember going there one night after AFL soldier raided the place and took some of the displaced people right to the nearby beach, executed them. It was a lady whose last name is now Kofa. She was one of our aggressive reporters from Sun-Times and then the Herald. And then eventually we all met again at Duba with Gaswaya Minto. So she and I went to the compound that morning after the raid, the night before. We interviewed people, I took pictures, and people were screaming, but they had nowhere to go. There were AFL soldiers all around, the people who have been harassing them and trying to murder them. They were frightened, you see. They couldn't sleep. You see, that was the first sign. And then eventually, as the war intensified, when MPFL men and women were approaching the capital, There was another major incident. The government arrested more than 500 guilds and minor soldiers. Let me speak about this today. They were detained. You listening to me? They were detained. The wives and family members, some family members of these soldiers marched to the Ministry of Information. They sat down on the ministry steps, you know, waiting for the Minister of Information, Emmanuel Buya at that time, to address them regarding their husbands and relatives that were in jail for being allegedly a member of the MPFL or interacting with the MPFL. I'm sure most of these soldiers were innocent, but because we had a cruel regime and these people were guilds and minors already targeted, we all know the story, you know, but they didn't get answer. Unity, Alice, and I covered that event at Ministry of Information. That was early part of 1990, you know. Today, I sometimes wonder, where are these, what happened to these soldiers? More than 500 guilds and minor soldiers. I remember that headlines we carried. Nobody had ever questioned. Nothing ever appeared in the TRC report, unfortunately, about those people, you know. That was another sign. The government, we knew the government position. Joe had declared already, telling the Liberian people and the Nimba people that y'all tell your sons and daughters in Nimba, when I get ready, I'm going to raid the place. I will throw bombs there, all those kind of things. We don't expect leaders to say those kind of things, but these things happen. We saw the dangers the people were in. They didn't get protection. But all these things went on. And we had our foreign embassies, our foreign partners and friends. They didn't even, you know, take precautionary measures. And then came the Lutheran Church massacre. And everybody was like, wow, making it look like a surprise. Did you not see it coming? You see, but in any case, by July 1990, I was not in the city anymore. I fled already across MPFL lines, fighting for my life and all of that. When I came now, I began following the news and all of that. So that is how I was not able to be in the city to actually move to the Lutheran Church to see what happened. And all of those kind of motivated me to take my camera and follow Prince Johnson. Do you know, I personally got angry for myself. Let me just say this today, that I was not in town when Joe was captured, because I would have seen myself in the airport with them. You see, and that is why when I came, I challenged myself. I said I will not rest. Anywhere Prince Johnson went, I was with him. With my camera, I was following him. Any press conference, I went there. At one point in Vatan, I was following Prince Johnson to enter Monrovia. I was almost shot by one of his rebel commanders. You see, because he entered into conflict with ECOMOG because they had banned him from carrying weapons, you know, to Monrovia at that time. He used to enter Broad Street, insult Amos Sawyer, the whole generation and all of that. So ECOMOG banned him from entering Monrovia without weapon. But he defied ECOMOG. After he had the press conference, he said he will go with his troop. I said, fine, this is the moment. I follow him behind his convoy from Point 4. We got to Vatan before the Kanneh, where the Senegalese had their ECOMOG checkpoint. You know, the Senegalese were no-nonsense soldiers, just like the Nigerians. I love them. So they stopped Prince Johnson. I knew something was about to pop out. I got down quickly with my camera from the convoy. I stood on the side. Behold, one of the rebels was in the corner just watching me. They all took position. As soon the tension started, and you know, he's an action man and began to shout, began to point pistols. I had my camera. The next thing, the rebel from left angle shouted, say, "Halt!" He had his gun pointed. I just brought my camera down. You see, so we went through that. But in any case, I was not in Monrovia when the Lutheran Church massacre took place. I would have loved to be there. It is a sad event. We didn't expect it. Made the souls of those who died. plus other who died in massacres around the country. Rest in peace. That's how unfortunate I see it to be. The capture of Doe, the same way I wasn't there, you know, I would actually, even at the time Prince Johnson marched to the BTC to negotiate with Doe. So, you know, all of those, I miss it. And I would have loved to be there. If I had been in Moravia, I'm sure I want to march with Prince Johnson to the barracks, because all along I was behind Prince Johnson. I was trying to study him. What makes him so brave? I've not seen any rebel leader in the world, Africa, to compare with him. You know, I may have differences with him, like any other person, but I admire him for his bravery. You know, what makes him brave to do the things he was doing, you know? And unfortunately, today, no reporter, no journalist from around the world can really show a film or a photograph of what went on in the barracks when he met with Doe. It's unfortunate.
Thank you. I have and Jackson also, we have a call on the line, but before that, we want to look at the activities of ECOMO. You know, ECOMO came in, but while the caller is calling, we have some pictures here of your newspaper clippings. I know James Fasuekoi, you even went as far as Sierra Leone to cover the command job. Here are some stories that you did. Caller, your name and your question, please.
My name is Melissa Yadu from New Jersey. I just listened to the guest narrating the King Church massacre. I'm sitting down, it's going on my body, and my mind is just looking like we are in the same 1990 situation. To be specifically, I'm a Liberian. This is what we went through in Liberia in 1990. Because a government of a country has a responsibility to protect our citizens. You cannot have outside aggression from foreign country and enter your land. And the citizens that you are under obligation to protect them, you declare them enemy and order them to be killed. So the explanation the brother is giving is so touching. It's so touching. My cousin husband was killed in the military church. My cousin husband. Because most of the Liberians that were killed in the military church, they were afraid of being haunted. They were being haunted during the day. They do mopping up, they go and mark their houses. Then in the night, they go to those houses and start picking them up from their houses. So they were afraid of being picked up in their houses. And they went to the church thinking that the church was a holy place and God was going to protect them. That's how they went to the military church. And that's why they were afraid of to be done to them in their houses. It was done to them in the church. In front of the whole world, the witnesses. And some of the things that can trouble my heart, our Liberian brother who can advocate for war crime codes. Every time they talk about war crime code, all the war crime code advocates in Liberia, the only person they can talk about is Prince Johnson. So the people that kill over 500 Liberians in the military church, in UN compound, in places that the brother is narrating. Were they Prince Johnson? The Prince Johnson massacre among people? So until we Liberians can speak the truth, can address the reality in Liberia, we are far from compromising. We are far from you know, forgetting and forgiving people. The thing we only went in Liberia, every Liberian who lives in Liberia saw it. Even people who were outside of Liberia, they listened to Elizabeth Plum. She was reporting all of those stuff. But they failed to acknowledge what happened to us. On the war crime If white people can listen to our plea and get what Congo in Liberia, let me see whether they will be left alone and wait for Prince Johnson.
I don't think so, but you can just round up.
Yeah, so my brother, thank you to the guest who was explaining.
Thank you.
These are who live for God. He's telling the truth about what he saw. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, we've also had a few questions from Facebook regarding the balance of reporting and the bias that can sometimes be in reporting. One of the questions to both of you was that since warlords would call for you, or Mr. Fasuekoi, in your case, you were following Prince Johnson closely, was there any pressure to lean your story or your article in any one direction? Were you able to maintain a balance in your reporting?
Oh, definitely, yes, I did. And throughout, I didn't have any kind of major situation where I can say a rebel faction seriously confronted me on a particular report, although I may not have reported to their taste. I mean, as an independent journalist, but in any case, I try my best to stay neutral. You know, the thing about reporting is that when you report, it is very easy. Everybody is reading. They will be able to make their own analysis. If you are not fair, you yourself will sense it if you go back and look at your report. So, I mean, you are not reporting for objects like rocks or trees and all of that. You are reporting for the whole world. Audiences, some of them are far educated than you. Some of them are far more great writers than you or journalists than you. So you have to take all of these into consideration to make sure you are using facts. Otherwise, you're going to have a serious problem. But yes, there might have been few cases where people didn't like the report, but the best thing I could do is to make sure I report to the best of my ability. And I mean, it is the same thing that led me to Sierra Leone, my way of reporting. It is the same thing that allowed me into mainstream Yilimo territories, and later on Yilimo J, and later on Yilimo K. Remember, Yilimo K was dominated by Mandingos Liberians, like I said earlier, who were later on fighting my ethnic Lamas. And yet here I was in Monrovia, traveling every now and then to Tubmanburg. You know, I knew the dangers involved. There's a reporter who often traveled with me also from that ethnic group. I very much highly respect him. I won't call his name. He and I went in places, including Soan. And every time we went, some of the fighters of Mandingo background came and spoke to him, probably asking, do you really trust the man you brought? Who is he? And all of that. You know, but all in all, my reporting, you know, and everything that I was doing kind of fell in line to the point where I was trusted by many of the fast fashions that I visited or later requested for me to travel to their front lines and see what they were doing there.
Now, Mr. Kanneh, what do you have to add to that about the balance of reporting?
Well, I had never experienced a time where anyone accused me, like, with evidence, you know, that this story was untrue and provide evidence to back it. I know Charles Taylor done it. He accused me one-on-one. He said, I hated him. I heard that you don't like me. You like the Kroma people. You like Johnson people. You don't like me. What did I do to you? In his office. And the only reason I got out there saying was because I was with two international journalists. I was sitting right between them. So there was little at that moment they could do to harm me. But I asked him to prove it. And he turned his drawer down. He turned it upside down. He actually pulled it out, took all the files and photos and turned it upside down. Went to the next, he called his press secretary, Reggie Goodrich. He called everybody. He sent somebody to Boley's office, Judge Boley's office. This is when they were part of the council. And they looked for this story that he was trying to make up, that I said he was trying to invade Monrovia. This is on almost a few months before April 6th. The American Embassy Security Unit, the U.S. Peace Mission Security Unit, have met. Every Friday there was a security meeting. And we were not going to the meeting, but they would come out with a press statement after the meeting. And that press statement actually pointed to preparations by a large rebel group trying to take over Monrovia, overrun Ecomoc, and seize power by force. That was the statement. Me being Liberian, obviously, I knew more on the ground. So my story was the statement, the UN statement or the embassy joint statement did not call a name, a particular name, but observers and many other facts surrounding this story or this allegation point to Charles Taylor, the rebel group. And that was where he said, I accuse him falsely. Why would he take over Monrovia, ever attack Monrovia? He's already in the mansion serving with the 6-member council, and he would never, ever do that. So this is October 95. And guess what? April 96, 5 months in between, yes, he invaded Monrovia, like the story said. Okay? And he tried to seize power. That's when he went after Roosevelt Johnson, that he was the guy in the way. Once he arrested Roosevelt Johnson, and that would just pave the way up there. So they will accuse you and all of that. You don't mind, you don't listen to that. I get that on Facebook every day too, but they can't really prove it because you're not like that. So, like Fasu said, the stories we write, people will read it in Monrovia. Aid workers that are based in those territories will read it, and they will know whether it was not based on facts. Okay, so it was hard to tilt anything, to slant any story. It was just difficult. You couldn't do that. And those who try to do it, they end up serving with faction leaders in faction groups. They were no longer journalists, like, independent. They had to work for, group like Charles Taylor Group or other militia groups. But if you wanted to stay independent, you had to exercise that. It was hard to just, go off the rails. It was difficult. You couldn't even do that. And then you rely on that, on the good reporting, to be able to get the next trip to go in there. And once you went in there, I remember UNIMA groups, groups of commanders came one night at my house around 11 and said we had to go Bombing Hills, Tottenburg. And I said, okay. So while going, they said, oh, tomorrow we want to, actually they said, oh, we arrested a reporter because he came here, we gave him all of this money and he didn't get the story out or something like that. And they took this guy with them. But they brought him back the next day. So it was hard to do anything like that, anything crazy. I wasn't ever part of that. And my track record's there. But it was always the thing that people, it's a rivalry. Armed groups are rivaling between, among each other and for story, for publicity. They know that a member of the group had done something and they want that thing completely not being part of that. Don't mention that it was there. And you cannot do that in your good conscience. So it was hard to balance it, but we did it anyway. And that's why, you were able to go back and report and things like that. For Chancellor, I stayed far away from her a lot. And every time I was in Taylor's territory, I was with Ecomoc. Okay. The first time he announced the encampment, and then he said he would start disarmament. I had to go in with ECOMOG. Even when he got married, I had to go in with ECOMOG. I was sitting with the ECOMOG generals in the church because for me, Taylor group, I didn't see particularly easy to go around. So I would report for them and do all of that, but they were not a group that would come and get me, say, let's go here, or just voluntarily walk into the territory. I just didn't do that. No.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Fasuekoi.
I wanted to add something quickly.
Okay, I have some questions here for you from Mr. J.D. Slanger. So go ahead.
Yeah, let me just show you this picture.
I'm trying to charge up my battery. Give me a chance.
You see this picture?
Hold on, let me take a good shot. Do that again. Okay, yes. Who in those pictures? That's Prince Johnson, it looked like.
Yeah, that's Prince Johnson right at the last end here. I just forgot to say that that actually there were other instances where we were confronted as a group when it came to our work related to journalism. For example, the morning I took this picture of General Johnson, he had come to the Inquirer. It was before the Octopus War. He had come and he went on threatening that he didn't like the way we were reporting about his fighters, looting, disturbing the city ordinance and the rest of it. So he had promised the Inquirer staff, including me, that if another war came on in Liberia, he would make sure he killed us first. You see, so that's why he made a statement and he was about to leave from our office at the Inquirer on Kiri Street. That's why I took that shot. And there was other situation where we were confronted as a group of journalists, for example, in Greensville by LPC, and were even arrested and went through some mental torture. After we landed there, it was Unity Allison and I, along with Budu Kessa of UPR. Remember, Unity Allison reported for the BBC and also AP, just like me. So we have gone there, and all of a sudden, while we're busy doing news coverage, Ruth Atella and the late General, what the guy, he used to be another guy I used to admire for his bravery. He was one strong commander for the LPC. He later died while they were trying to capture Roosevelt Johnson. I think it was the last incident.
Is that William? William, Madison William?
No, not Madison William. This guy was a military man and he took training probably in the US. I just forgetting his name. So they had all arrested and they kind of took us to an unknown area, kept us in the shack, and then they were there displaying machetes before us, showing us how to kill us LPC fighters, naked, painted, and all the kind of, right there in Greenville, in your home area, Mr. Ja. So we went through all of that because they alleged that Unity had reported on the BBC, which they couldn't prove, like Jackson Kanneh said. Some of the things they accusation out of, they couldn't prove it, but they just threw it in the air. They said Unity had reported that LPC buried 100 civilians alive in Greenville. That's all they arrested us for. When we asked them for the proof, they couldn't prove anything. But in any case, they didn't want to arrest Unity alone, but Pudu, me and Unity, they took us away. And one guy named Nathaniel Batty used to be the head of Mercy Hospital Medical Relief Agency in Liberia in the middle of war. He really did well, collecting wounded people from everywhere, receiving them at the Mercy Hospital, Relief Hospital, temporary release hospital they had near OAC in Vatan. That guy had flown to Greenville with us on a UN chopper. So he the one pleaded that they release us. Since Rupert Taylor and the commander, the LPC commander, couldn't listen to them. I mean, to him. He did, the United Nations pilots that took us there, they were about to run to the plane and take off and go. So Bati told them, look, that's the last thing you should do. We cannot leave these 3 international journalists here in the hands of these people. And the Liberians, I know these guys are unpredictable. We cannot do that. That is the last thing we do. Leave them here and fly back to Monrovia. He told them, if you are going, I will stay here with them. That's what blessed us. So they stopped. They didn't pick up the plane. So eventually, the wave got around. They kept telling them, y'all leave. We will kill these people. Y'all leave. They insisted they couldn't leave. Eventually, they released us. You see. And then I had another incident in 1998 when Taylor had his lavish birthday party. Who was then the press secretary, actually threw us out, confronting me and some other report. I think it was Bosu Hada, threw us out. They couldn't let us enter the mansion to take part in Taylor's party because, according to him, he said, I have been sending photograph of the president that misrepresented him. So he couldn't let me enter the mansion to cover Taylor's lavish wedding that year. There was another incident in Salala. There was an announcement by Taylor. At that time, Taylor was president, that all local and foreign journalists should meet in Salala, not Salala, Totota, Totman Farm, that he had turned into his own farm at that time. That they were going to have a major press conference. So we all drove there. Imagine from Monrovia driving all the way to Totota, only to be turned away from the doors that I won't go in. First they set the condition that as an AP reporter photographer, they won't let me carry my cameras in. Right. I said, fine, I can go. So later they said, no, we can't even let you in. So they didn't let me in. I had to stand by the building. The whole news conference was on. And then I joined the group. We came back to Monrovia. And then there was another incident somewhere around maybe 1999. I took an AP crew to Cary to meet Taylor. We had interviews set with Mr. Taylor. The AP crew had come from New York, Abidjan to Monrovia. They joined me. They were my guests. The interview was set. We get to Cary, and then the next thing, Guru comes to meet the crew, only to see me at the front. He said, oh no, we cannot let you in. Why? He couldn't explain, but I could sense that just because I was there, he said, I've always filed pictures that misrepresented the president. So he turned us away. Imagine people coming from New York, Abidjan, and then finally to Monrovia.
Mr. Fasuekoi.
So we went through these things.
I know, and I want us to, our time is fast spent. I want us to cover ECOMOG briefly before we leave, but there are questions here from Mr. J.D. Slang. I want to mention that to you. He said, first, were you a reporter assigned to Prince Johnson? That's number one. Number two, were you able to report the wrongs that Prince Johnson was doing? And then number three, he said, you didn't find that, whatever you mentioned, you didn't find that in the TRC report because it was a fabrication of you, the journalist. I think it was about, so your response.
Well, no one assigned me to Prince Johnson in the first place. I have always been an independent journalist. Even when I was working with the AP, one thing I love about the AP, whenever I email them or text them or call them, asking them, what kind of assignment you want me to do this season? You will tell me, James, it is your country. You look around, see what you can report on, see what you want to report on. So they gave me the leeway. I have free hand. And that's how I was able to work and live happily. But coming to the Prince Johnson issue, I was not assigned with Prince Johnson. I was working as an independent independent journalist and collecting, filming history, some of which I have I've published, as you've seen on my Facebook and the rest of it. So that was basically what I was doing. And it is unfortunate that the brother or sister will go far to say people, I don't know who he or she is accusing of fabricating, but there was nothing there to fabricate. The story I told about the 500 GIOs and minor soldiers that were detained was not a fabricated story. We follow up later to the BTC, Peku Masale, who graduated from BWR, who later became a journalist. He and I were working at the Duba at that time. We were the one that Gaswa, Yameto, and Gabriel Williams sent to the BTC to follow up after we had reported in our paper, Duba, 1990, that 500 minor GIOs were being detained by the government. We followed it up. And like we say in Liberia, let me leave that. When we went to the BTC, while we were there making arrangements to talk with whoever who answer our questions, we saw tension coming out. And then we sensed that some kind of arrangement might have been in place to capture us or to kidnap us. Guess what? Peku come from the southeast, and they were speaking in dialects and tongues. So Peku quickly pinched me. Guess what? We began taking bypasses. We ran away from there. This is a period where, just before this period, I had been photographing headless bodies. I had been photographing people hair cut off at coconut plantation, man. Where I went, they almost captured me because sometimes they carry out the atrocities. And then people gather in the morning. The scene killers come around looking. And yet our editors will send us to go take photographs. It was dangerous carrying cameras. Reporters were kind of safe because that one you can stand in the corner and just observe, walk away, take your note. But as a cameraman, it was difficult for me. I took pictures going between the people's legs at coconut plantation. Someone had that they have caught up the night before on the beach. People gathered looking, and all of those people who live in Monrovia during this period, they are aware of what I'm talking about. I took the picture, and someone shouted, "Who took picture?" I had to quickly have my camera and force myself between people. Yeah, imagine. So I am saying the killers were there. I stood the risks of being, arrested and taken away to the mansion at that time. When you go there, who knows? You never come back so easily. I've been arrested before, and while covering assignment in the mansion, I was tortured. And it was just God that took me from there. This was less than a year when Charles Bayon was bayoneted in the mansion. So what he or she talking about? Fabrication, 500 GIOs and minor men. These people were in the military, and the government arrested them because of the war that was coming, because they felt they have connection to the rebels, whatever, which any government at that time in power would probably do for its own protection. We understand. But it is not fabrication. There is nothing there to fabricate. I must tell you that.
Dennis, you said you wanted to talk a little bit about ECMO.
Yes, let's start with you, Jackson. Just briefly, we are way out of time. We want to just get ECMO came in, they were peacekeepers. Sometimes they were engaged in clashes with militias from all sides. Just give us a brief synopsis of ECMO's activities.
So ECMO lands in Monrovia in 1990, the late 1990, 3 months after Doe is captured under the Ghanaian leadership at the time. The commander was Ghanaian, and Doe is killed. And then the new mandate, ECMO is mandated now to be a peace enforcement because several peace accords have failed. So they came in as peacekeepers. They landed under a hill of gunfire. Chancellor did not want them in. They managed to get in. and they were still keeping peace, that is to separate the fighters, keep buffer zones. And while doing that, they were being attacked every time. So once Doe was captured and killed, ECOMOG had to redeem her name. And then the new mandate was to enforce the peace. That look, we will arrange those peace conferences. They had more than 10 peace conferences. Okay, Banjul the first, from there Mali, you have Lomé, you have Akasomo, you have Yamoussoukro, you have Freetown, you have up to Geneva. All right, and every time they went and signed something, Chancellor was the main suspect in that. He would just break it. He said, "Well, this is not a Bible. I'm not forced to adhere to it," and he would just violate them. Ceasefires, he would violate them. And so ECOMOG have been mandated now to be a peace enforcer. And that's when they came in with more weapons, with more lethal weapons, including community-based units among them to keep the peace. But doing that, they were enforcing the peace. So that's when they started pushing. Chancellor was, if you know Monrovia, Chancellor was in Mount Barkley. Okay, Mount Barkley right there before Carisburg. So Taylor was in Monrovia. And in order to keep the peace, Taylor needed to go back. So they had to push him. So ECOMOG became a little bit more forceful. And that's when they created a little bit more buffer zone to allow people, breathing space out of Monrovia. Monrovia it's like a little lake, not a complete island, but it's a peninsula, period. And they were all in there, just locked in there. Everybody was in Monrovia locked in there. ECOMOG became a little forceful. So that's how ECOMOG started going up and up and up in the interiors, liberating cities like Buchanan, Habel, Buchanan, Kakata, Tottenburg, and all those places became all ECOMOG, areas. So in the end, ECOMOG succeeded in organizing, in overseeing the new elections that Chancellor won. That was probably they thought that was the end of the story, and that's where I had to leave because I could not stay in there any longer. But once that era was over, Chancellor is elected. New series started. New militias pop up, and then war just resumed. So ECOMOG period, where the winners in this, they had lost so many people, they shared so many blood. I mean, rebels would take Nigerian citizens, Ghanaian citizens, just because their country contributed troops to come to Liberia. Okay, yeah. And Chancellor rebels were notorious for that. I'll say that again. They would take, they killed Senegalese soldiers, they killed Nigerian journalists. Okay, only because Nigeria is involved in Liberia. Nigeria had no reason to be in there other than to save Liberians. Okay, and to minimize the effect that that basically has spread in the sub-region. Liberian refugees were everywhere. In order to stop that, you had to enforce the peace in Liberia, and that was all they did. And rebels didn't like that. So it was sad, but it was a giant move that ECOWAS. First, it was smart to come up with the idea that we have a peace monitoring force that will be called ECOMOG, that is named after the West African Economic Commission. And once they put that together, they put an observer mission on the ground. They made arrangement for the observer mission to make report, see whether ECOMOG could send in real troops. And that's how it started. So, we can just say, hey, ECOMOG were, the best in that. They came out with a brand new idea and they executed it to the end. And besides, they actually saved us because what we did in Monrovia was just impossible without ECOMOG. There will be no international organizations. There will be no relief. There will be no journalists.
Soldiers, Nigerian soldiers from ECOMOG emerged and took the bag of sand and began, fighting it around the mouth of the trench of the hole there they had there, ready to go in. During the fighting earlier, before we got there, they had just shot an ECOMOS soldier who died in a trench. So now another man was jumping. That's how serious it was. I saw it, I said, wow. And we quickly interviewed them and we left the area. And that was not the only thing. So many other places we went,
Thank you. If you just joined us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing, or we are concluding now, the Liberian Civil War Part 1. That's our interview with journalist James Fasuekoi and journalist Jackson Kanneh on their account of the Liberian Civil War. We have not even scratched the surface. We have not talked about the civilian, what else was going on behind the lines. We have not talked about all the peace conferences and what happened. But this is just an introduction to tell us about the Liberian Civil War. So Danielle, let me go back to you. If you don't have any more questions, then we can ask our guests to wrap up or give their concluding remarks.
Yes, no other questions from me. So Mr. Kanneh, can you please tell us what your final remarks are on the Civil War tonight?
Yes, I would not hesitate to go there. So this impregnated June 7th and maybe beyond protest marches, my only advice is that if it's going to be peaceful, let it be peaceful. Because people get in there, take advantage, infiltrate the crowd. The crowd may have a whole different intention, and other people were bringing people to get in there, and somebody could just open fire, right, towards the police, for example, and the police would think that the crowd is attacking them, and then they can attack back, and things just go down from there. So my warning is, we don't have the luxury of getting another ECOMOS in Liberia. Okay, that was the last thing they done. That was just too much for them already. Some 15 years they die in there, and we may look like, well, we're beginning to look like we are not appreciative at all. After all of that, let's be peaceful. I mean, I'm not there. I'm not going to encourage you to get in the street. I'm not there. Well, I told my family, don't get there. And that's because I know the roots of Liberia's problem have always originated from protest marches. That's where things start. And then you just see it never gets better. Okay, it just goes downhill from there. So you be careful out there. If your intention is really peace and just presenting some grievances, go there and do that peacefully. We have covered peaceful marches here in Brooklyn. Okay, so many times with Reverend Al Sharpton. When Amadou Diallo was shot, I was there. Another Hispanic guy was shot. The Haitian, I forgot his name. When he was attacked by police, beating almost to death. I've marched on Wall Street. I've covered for VOA. I was there. I've seen protest marches here. They're peaceful. The worst that can come out of it is police will go and take some people who would not stay in line. They will handcuff them with these rubber handcuffs, or plastic handcuffs. Okay, and the next day you may get to the judge and get a warning, and that's it. But because it's peaceful, so if the city is going to define your protest route, I would advise you go by that. And many of the leaders come out of here. They're all from here. There's no way you watch people protest in Philadelphia every day, in New York and DC every day, and you go in there and try to turn it the other way around. Don't do that. Don't do that. Follow the protocol they give you. This is the route you go. Follow that route and do your protest and do your presentation and go home. Then you leave the rest with the government or whoever you want answer from. But to turn small little things, even as big as it could be, to turn it into civil disobedience and then violence, it's just not going to help us again. There's no more ECOMOS coming in there. We need to be careful. That's it. And good night.
Thank you. Mr. Fasuekoi, what's your final thoughts on the Civil War tonight?
Yes, and we also begin with the last words from our colleague and dear friend, journalist Jackson Kanneh, that ECOMOG will no longer be coming to Liberia. Those were the last chances we had in the past. So in whatever things we are doing henceforth, we should understand that we have responsibilities as Liberians, doing everything within our power to maintain the peace that is obtaining today. I like to be honest, and you see me, I personally have never supported any particular group, any warring faction either, or any political individual to say I will be, they're fanatic, like what we see going on around today, praise singers all over the place. And that is why whenever, I'm ready, I never hesitate to write how I see things, to write about my views. It gets me so free-handed to write how, I want to write. And as I speak now, I have an article on the pending protest that might be coming out in a matter of days. But I want to say this, that Liberia, like we have heard other people say before, is all we have. I lived in Liberia. I was there before the war. I saw what led to the war, the gross abuses of power, persecuting one group of people, with people not speaking out, and eventually we saw Prince Johnson coming to the state, stepping up to the plate to remove the reproaches that was hanging over Nimba. We don't want to go to that route, and I can tell people for a fact that I was there from the day the start. I began covering all over the country, and later I went to cover this Senator Bombly, one of the former Nimba senator, Hillary Bombly. Imagine, here was a senator, a senior senator from Nimba, from the opposition party that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was Jackson though had was standard bearer for. This man couldn't travel to Nimba. He needed journalists to travel with him for his own safety. He was afraid, harassment, or even death. As a reporter photographer, he found me to be his best choice. And Sam Van Kessel, who was the managing editor of the Daily Star, 1986, imagine, far back 1986, began sending me with Hillary Bombly, a family, including Aquila Bombly at that time. All of them came to like me. They came to respect me. I was part of the family. We traveled at night. He was harassed, afraid, that he would be kidnapped and killed just between Monrovia and Nimba. So I saw injustices. Nobody spoke about it. And he was just one of the lone voices that spoke, all because we came out with a headline, Nimba citizens now treated fairly, in our Daily Star newspaper, that he has spoken out. It became a big target. So we went through all these things. I didn't like it. I didn't have the power to stop it, but I did what I could, my own contribution, because I would be left with my conscience and history would judge us. So we went through these things. We want the best for Liberia. You see, we don't want no more crisis. So I am just appealing to people who are leaders today in power that they should begin to think. And sometimes I ask, with the prevailing situation in Liberia, are those in power really familiar with what happened in the war? Were they even there? Most of the senators and representatives, people who taking arbitrary decisions today with respect to human rights violation and all of that, injustices, were they there? We saw people dying. We had to carry our own money to the front lines to give to people, whether in Liberia or Sierra Leone refugees. We get them money. They can't use the money. So we began carrying food with us whenever we travel with ECOMOG to Cape Mount, to the border, and other places, Grand Bassa, you know, along the St. John River, fighting between LPC and MPFL. People coming in their thousands. You see malnourished babies. You know, we saw a lot. Have they forgotten? Let them think, man. I am not personally against George Weah. As a matter of fact, I testified just recently in Tom Wewe's case in Philadelphia. This man, his picture, just a single picture, I took with George Weah. Mr. Penner, who was then his manager or so, taking us to the SOS village where we are making presentation. After the presentation, we took pictures together. That picture will be the one to save my family life and myself as I traveled through NPFL checkpoint to Fender and then eventually to Carisburg. I narrated part of the story in the court. I have personal admiration for Weah, and I still admire him as a human being. And I think he can do better. But the way things things are going on in the country, like he's not there at all. It is something for him to think about twice and quickly move. We know the Kru people for being aggressive. And I know in the world from biblical time, kings had never been handed power and they didn't act, or presidents. They will act. But so far, Weah is the only person I don't see acting. You cannot have the gavel and now use. People are expecting him to use his power in a better way to straighten the country. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Danielle.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fasuekoi, and thank you to both of you for being here tonight to share your experience of the war and allowing us to see the events of the war through a journalistic lens. As Dennis said, this is just the first part in our series on the Civil War, and so we'll have other perspectives to tell their stories in the coming weeks. So thanks again to our viewers. We're here every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we hope to see you again next week. And thanks again to our guests. We appreciate your time and you sharing your stories with us. Dennis?
Next week, we're going to come up with the victims or the survivors' perspectives on the Liberian Civil War. If you're a survivor of the Liberian Civil War, you're interested in sharing your story, contact us. But the bottom line is, we don't want no more war. We don't want war.
Thank you.
We thank all our viewers from across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. From my co-host Danielle, from my guest relations manager Stephanie Setro, and all of us at Focus on Liberia, we say goodbye, good night, and God bless you.